I have no idea what to expect now. I'm so excited.
That's good. That's good.
I love a good surprise.
How's it going, my truant people? DrSlaking, the Slacking Doctor, back with another Draft League review video for you today, and I'm joined by my good friend Strompfel. Do you want to say hi?
Hello. I'm
Uh,
so excited.
so Eric has no idea what we're doing. I didn't tell him what we're doing. I just said I'd surprise him. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of explaining to him, but I hope in doing so that will explain to you guys what this kind of video is about. And if you'll just give me a second, Eric, I've got to do a bit of housekeeping. Down in the description, guys, there is a subscriber Discord server for you all to check out. If you've been enjoying these Draft League review series, please do consider subscribing. Thanks to people like Eric and you guys showing support for the channel. We've been growing pretty fast, and I'm very grateful. So, yeah, if you like this video and others like it, please do consider hitting the subscribe button. Anyway, now that's out of the way, do you want to know what we're doing, Eric?
I sure do. I'm sitting here on the edge of my seat.
So, if you click this, it should take you through to the public EWT tiers.
Yes.
I've just sent Eric the link to what you guys can see on screen already. We're going to look... What I did is earlier this week, they will have seen this by now. I uploaded a video where I broke down why my EWT team was so bad and how I failed to draft around Terrakion completely. What I thought would be really fun is if you would join me in making a video where we come up with a legitimate draft plan for a Terrakion draft using these tiers. And we could show them how you and I together would try and build a plan around a Pokemon like Round 1 Terrakion, what we think would pair well with it, and how we think about team synergy during the drafting process.
Oh my god, that was a lot of information. Let me back this up.
Basically,
Right, so
we're
taking round 1 Terrakion.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, round 1 Terrakion. We can have anything we want.
Yeah. Anything we want, but we've got to try and think like realistically. For example, if you said, well, let's get round to Aegislash, I might be like, well, we wouldn't have planned for that, right? You wouldn't expect Aegislash to be in round 2. We can be a little bit ambitious, and we can look afterwards to see if our plan would have worked in practice. But I just want us to kind of theory draft. We've been drafting a lot, for those of you guys that don't know. In the last week, we've been drafting a lot for Owl together. Eric's been helping me draft there. I've been helping him draft. And I feel like we have quite different ideas and views on things, but actually we meet in the middle quite well to come up with quite a good middle ground. That's how I feel. I don't know about you.
I couldn't disagree more. I'm just kidding. No, okay. So my second question is, right. So
yes.
This is Gallowdex.
Yep.
Post home, right?
But this is post home, but pre DLC. So we can have Toxic on all the mons that came through home, but we don't have access to DLC moves. So you're gonna have to think, all right, well, you know, you wouldn't have Aurasphere on Latios, for example. Not that it's in here, or Scyther wouldn't have dual wing beat or anything like that. So we are slightly rewinding the clock, but the principle should still apply to how we think of forming partnerships with certain Pokemon. And how we draft things. For example, in Owl, spoiler for you guys that will see Owl videos coming up in the future, we were looking at Shaman Sky, Lando T, and things like that, and we tried to find good partners for them. And I think Eric's a pretty good balance to me, where I can sometimes be a little bit reckless with my drafting. You are a bit more sensible. Well, sometimes it depends.
All right. So the only problem is that I usually theory mon while I'm outside walking, and I can't do that now. So it's going to be interesting.
Yes, exactly. I'm putting you on the spot because I want people to understand the process of. I like to think that we're pretty good draft league players. I'll obviously acknowledge I believe you're a better player than myself, but I like to think we're pretty good. And some of my viewers maybe are newer to the format, maybe don't play that much, so I want to kind of let them see what happens behind the scenes in a Bovines front office call. When we're all arguing about how you compose a team. So let's look at it from the beginning. Isaac's going to love this because I've just opened a spreadsheet up on my screen. I'm actually going to open up screen sharing with you so you can see what I showed them as well. So you should be able to see my screen now. So this is the actual team that I drafted. I don't think it was very good at all. It had a lot of problems. And this was after we'd made trades to try to patch it up. So I'll kind of talk you through, Eric, some of the things that I've said in the last 2 videos because they will have seen it and you won't. So my main problems was my defensive core consisted of Mandibuzz plus Mandibuzz, maybe Claydol, but Claydol I didn't want to bring to many games because it's very bad. And so really, there were so many games where Mandibuzz had to 6-0 from a defensive perspective, or I just got overwhelmed. From an offensive perspective, I found that I had nothing to help Terrakion break through bulky fairies, bulky psychics, and bulky grounds. And even if Terrakion broke through, say, an opposing Hippowdon, I then didn't have too much to take advantage of it because Toxtricity actually spams Boom Burst most of the time, which you're more worried about Ghosts and Steals for. So what I found on this team composition is that my offensive pieces didn't really break for each other, and my defensive pieces were too weak to support Mandibuzz, and there weren't really many of them. So what I kind of want to do is wind the clock back. Imagine that I came to you with this team instead of just drafting all of it and then bitching about it. And I came to you round 2 with a Terrakion, and I said, all right, Eric, what do you think we should partner with a Terrakion? So, yeah, let's...
Oh, God. Right, so... Obviously, starting off with Terrakion, as you said, having something that's Terrakion that helps Terrakion break or takes advantage of what Terrakion can break would be good. It really depends on if you want to start off going a little bit more for the bulky side or the offensive side. If you started Terrakion, I'd say go more for the offensive side since Terrakion is such a powerhouse. Partnering something up with Terrakion as the main breaker would be ideal, with something that I can actually deals with bulky psychics, I think is the main thing with the Terrakion. So starting off the draft with it's something like a very simple Terrakion Weavile core would be great.
I actually love that.
We've got that it might be the most realistic case.
No, so basically in pre-home leagues, Weavile was undrafted sometimes. It was very late sometimes. I think we could easily have picked up Terrakion Weavile round 1 and 2 if we'd wanted to. That's one idea that we could. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the thing that Weavile really offers for Terrakion is, of course, removal of psychic types. Without Pursuit is a little bit harder, but Weavile really pressures a lot of things that Terrakion appreciates being gone. And Terrakion breaking down a lot of bulky waters for Weavile, a lot of bulky steals for Weavile. Really appreciate for when Weavile wants to come in and start knockoff spamming. Also, removing stuff like leftovers and bulky fairies means that it's hard to switch into Terrakion later on for a bulky fairy. So those two kind of synergize very well together. Now, Weavile is fucking expensive. I don't know how much budget I have for this.
Well, I will be keeping track of the budget, so you can always check out screen share here. I'll pencil in Weavile. So we actually got 1,000 points. So we can easily kind of afford this and balance it out at the end. I drafted... not especially top heavy in this league, but I easily could have done. And we'll probably be able to find some budget picks. And bear in mind, guys, this is probably going to be a slightly longer video, and we might go back and change things. So Weavile we can put in right now, but the nature of these draft plans is that they are going to be fluid. And there might be times where you get to the end and you're like, actually, Sneasel would be better. Let's pick up Sneasel and drop Weavile for something else high tier. You know, these things happen. But let's. So I love this. Eric knows this. When we drafted an Owl last season, I drafted around the offensive core of Mega Latios, Weavile, Keldeo. That's a Psychic, Dark, Fighting core. Now, that's not a common core that people talk about in Draft League. You always hear about Fire, Water, Grass, and Fairy, Dragon, Steel. But Fighting, Psychic, and Dark do work in that same kind of triangle, covering each other's weaknesses and stuff. And it is really powerful. And I actually love offensive cores built around that. We also hit some really good speed tiers with Weavile. Terrakion straight away, having, I think it's 125 for Weavile, isn't it?
I think it is.
I'm pretty sure it is. So is Weavile 180 points? Have you got the tiers in front of you?
It's 180 points.
Yeah. So we hit expensive mons, but we hit a really fast, strong core. And like Eric says about the knockoff on fairies, I actually think that's a fantastic point because, for example, there was one week where I took on a Clefairy. Well, that thing doesn't want its Eviolite knocking off, otherwise it really can't handle Terrakion. Clefable, the same. Clefable, people think Clefable is this hugely bulky Pokemon, but without its leftovers, actually, it isn't that bulky. It really relies on those leftovers for recovery. So I completely agree with you here that synergy knockoff now being so spammable with Z-Move and Mega's gone really actually helps Weavile. even though Pursuit's gone. So I love that. What are you thinking about next?
Okay, so obviously with Terrakion Weevil, you have two very offensive mons, but right now you kind of lack Stealth Rockers, since Terrakion is a main one, and you don't want to bring Stealth Rockers to Terrakion every single week.
I agree.
You want something that brings Terrakion and Weevil in, especially on mons that they want to be in against. Terrakion wants to come in against Bulky Fires, Bulky Steels, maybe. It's something along those lines. And having something that switch into Bulky Waters would also be appreciated right now. And the one that I'm looking at right now, though it actually would fit a lot of these criteria, would be Celebi. Because Celebi, with access to U-turn, would bring in stuff like Bulky Steels and Bulky Fires. Those are two mons that really wants to deal with Celebi, even Bulky Dark type, which Terrakion preys on as well. Celebi gets rocks. Celebi has a pretty good speed tier, is a very, very good switch into a lot of the Bulky Waters out in the game. And the one thing that Celebi also provides is a little bit of a knockoff bait, because removing Celebi's leftovers has been a way of kind of shutting it down long term, especially if something like Sandstorm is up, Toxic Spikes is up. And Terrakion is something that you don't really want to bring knockoff of. So having the knockoff guarantee in Terrakion is really good for keeping Celebi more of a threat later on. Celebi can set up in many ways as well. So I feel like Celebi can actually work pretty well with these two.
Yeah.
Obviously, our team is looking weak to a lot of the common typing, but Celebi also provides a bulky psychic type, which the team likes, since Weevil is currently the dark type. So you can't really throw in Weevil on all the bulky psychics in the game, like Reuniclus and Necrosimus and shit, because with removal of single beam, I feel like Celebi became a more prevalent threat when it comes to dealing with bulky psychics.
Yeah, so I completely agree, and I think that's really worth mentioning, guys, is that you might pick up a dark type like Weavile that you think this is a great dark type, but it isn't a switch into psychic types because it's so frail, it gets worn down by rocks. You get it wrong once, even if they click coverage moves like Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball plus rocks will wear you down fast. Like, it won't be able to switch in many times. There are some times where you might need your health on Weavile to at least take one hit at some point in a game. Then you're kind of looking at your other psychic resists and thinking, all right, well, I might need a bulky psychic and a bulky steel to help support that. The other thing I love about Celebi on this team, actually, is straight away it gives us an amazing Scold switch in, because with Natural Cure alongside its grass typing, you can just switch out and get rid of that burn. So it really covers a lot here. Along with Terrakion, it covers its water weakness, ground weakness, as you mentioned. So I think actually this is a pretty nice pairing. One thing I will add is in this actual league, as the draft happened, Celebi went round 1. So this wouldn't have been possible. But I think what we're trying to do here is come up with a feasible draft plan, not knowing what was going to happen in the draft. Imagine no picks had happened yet. And I think you don't usually expect Celebi to go round 1. That was very shocking when it happened. And I think this is a viable draft plan. So I think we should keep it on there, because I think it's everything you've said is very true. And again, now looking at the speed tiers again, really, really nice fleshed out speed tiers too. So we're pretty top heavy points wise, but this is a cool psychic, dark, fighting, offensive core that Eric's also picked out here for us. And I love that. It's got some momentum on it with Celebi. It's got some hazard, as you say, with Terrakion and Celebi. I think it's pretty cool. Where would you go next from here? What would you be thinking about picking up from this point? You mentioned having some common weaknesses and stuff like that.
So there are some common weaknesses. Mainly, I'd say Fairy is a pretty big one. Fighting isn't really fully covered with only Celebi. Celebi's flying problem is not fixed with Terrakion.
Yep.
There are a few things. Even the fire switches aren't really great, with Terrakion being the only one. But I feel like
we're a little bit U-turn weak right now as well. I actually have a bit of a suggestion for some of these. I don't know what you were thinking about next, but something that could help out with the fire types, that could help out again support the ground types and also the grass types as well. And the bug types could be something like Rotom Heat. Something like that could be a nice pickup, a kind of bulky but still offensive fire that could give us momentum. These would be the kind of things I'd be considering around now. Some steel types wouldn't be bad as well, as they would cover a lot of those apart from the fighting stuff. But what sort of thing were you looking at?
I don't know if Rotom Heat would last this long. That's my main question, because Rotom Heat has been like flavor mon of Generation 8.
That is true, yeah. And in a Wi-Fi league, you are right. It was often going round 3. So, yeah, fair. What else would you be looking for?
If Rotom Heat was around, I feel like that would be an amazing pickup.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just skimming through the tiers right now. I don't really have anything perfect in mind. Because when I saw Celebi, it was just it worked well alphabetically because it was so high up. So it just caught my attention.
No, that's fair, and it's difficult when they're kind of redded out because they've been drafted and stuff. It makes it a little bit harder to kind of see things. Rotom Heat would do similar things. Rotom Wash, sorry, would do similar things, and Rotom Wash was a bit of a sleeper pick this generation, being able to help out with ground types, fire types, and stuff like that. But actually, one thing that I think might have lasted till round 4 in this generation a few times could have been something like Galarian Weezing. Which would help out with, again, bug types, fighting types, ground types, would give us T-Spikes, would give us some Defog. I think, in my opinion, it's a little bit overpriced in this league at 140, to be honest, so I don't know whether we need to look cheaper than that. But I do think Galarian Weezing's an interesting pickup.
One thing, I don't know how long Seismitoad lasted for, but if you could pick up Seismitoad, that would be great.
Yeah.
As a very defined, just as a very defined rocker, very defined fire switching, so we don't have to deal with that. It also beats steel type, which is fine. Dracovish is always something you need to take into account.
In this format,
if Rotom Wash was around, I feel like that would be. If Rotom Wash was around, I feel like that would be an even better fit, because obviously you don't want to run heavy duty boots and Weavile too many weeks in a row. And the voltating momentum with Celebi is always appreciated.
Well, I'm pretty confident Rotom Wash would last if you wanted that pick. I'm pretty sure it would get to here, and I like it on this team. But did you have another idea you were about to suggest?
It's maybe not really. I was about to say Seismitoad, but I don't know when that.
Yeah,
round 4 Seismitoad doesn't seem out of reach. I don't know.
People were taking like round 2 Seismitoad. It was going early. I think I recently drafted a round 2 Seismitoad because it's the Dracovish, it's the OU Dracovish counter, right? Or it was before Dracovish got banned. It was the Wi-Fi league like hot pick. As you say, Rotom, Heat, and Seismitoad, I would say, were the 2 most fashionable mons that will drop in fashion over the generation. Things like Dracovish and stuff will always be fairly fashionable, but yeah, they were the 2 that I think really, really were very popular. Rotom Wash, though, I think we could get here if you wanted to go the Rotom Wash route, and I love that thing, so.
I actually found something else that caught my attention, which was a little bit cheaper, and that was Primarina. It's just 20 points cheaper, but Primarina could actually fix up a lot of things right now, because obviously the draft is kind of top heavy, but it's top heavy in a way where it's very highly physical offense right now.
Yes.
Primarina would add some sort of special breaker. It really takes care of bulky water types quite well. It's a very good fire switching, which we appreciate with Celebi. It's not a good rocker, but we can sort of find that in more of a budget steel pick later on. Yeah. So Primarina, I'd say, would be a pretty nice pick.
I like that, because I think so far, like, just to touch on what we've put on this plan at the moment, how much was Primarina as well? Was it 100 points?
120.
120, and is it 80 base speed? I think 80, something like 70, something like that. Let me put it on here. We've got.
I think it's even 65.
Oh, is it that slow? I thought it was like 70. Maybe I'm thinking of something else I've looked at. 60. Wow, it's a lot slower than I thought.
Oh, it's even 60.
Okay. I mean, it's a decent mid-speed tier for the team as well, which is perfectly adequate. So one of the things that I like about this is that I spoke a lot in the video that you haven't seen yet, Eric, about supporting Terrakion breaking things. We discussed, breaking bulky grounds, breaking bulky psychics, stuff like that. So we have Weavile that outright beats the bulky psychics. We have Weavile that pressures the bulky fairies. We have Celebi that outright beats the bulky grounds, along with Primarina now. But Celebi also pressures the bulky psychic. So Weavile beats one, Celebi pressures one. Weavile beats the other, or pressures the other, while Celebi beats the other, if you see what I'm saying. So we have this thing where we are building this offensive core, and that's why Dark Psychic Fighting is such a good offensive core, because they really do all work for each other in this team. And then when you add Primarine on that, something that, okay, it doesn't want to come in on ground types as much, but it can revenge kill ground types and apply offensive pressure superbly well. If you have to end up sacking your Weavile to get, although Weavile also beats ground types, but to get chip on something, and then you bring in your Primarine to click Specs Hydro Pump or Specs Moonblast, again, That's really nice. And what Primarina doesn't love is bulky waters and bulky steels. Well, Terrakion beats the bulky steels, Celebi and Weavile pressures them, and Terrakion and Weavile pressures the bulky waters while Celebi beats them. So really those four, to my brain, offensively, really synergize really nicely. I can see a team struggling to keep its checks in place, and as soon as we remove either their bulky water or their bulky psychic, that opens up the whole game for the rest of our offensive core. So yeah, I really like this team composition so far. We are burning through the points, but I feel like we can find some budget picks as we go. So one thing that I want to touch on as well is people talk a lot about fire, water, grass cores. We do have the start of that here. I think that, and Eric might agree with me here to some extent, that when you're a beginner, those cores are really useful, but as you get more experienced in the game, it's less about getting the exact cores and their exact typings and more about thinking how your team synergizes as a whole. You can have a fire, water, grass type on your team, but if those three specific mons don't fit together, it still won't be a good team. That's how I kind of feel.
Yeah, I can kind of agree with that. I'm looking through the tiers right now, and I realize there are like no good steel types in the game.
No, this is so true.
With Predex.
You see how hard drafting.
I don't really know. Yeah.
So is that where you're looking next? So you're feeling like this team could do with a good steel type next.
So what I'm feeling right now is that even though we have a very good start, we need at least another thing with Stealth Rocks. We need something that can remove our hazards, because right now it's looking to be very spikes weak. And even though Celebi is a very good response to a lot of ground types, if you face up against something like a Flygon, you're busted wide open since Flygon gets U-turn. So definitely some sort of ground resist, something that can get rid of Stealth Rocks, and definitely another Stealth Rocker. For the budget Stealth Rocker, I was actually looking at, you were just talking about fire, water, grass cores and how they're not overrated, but not essential.
Yeah.
But I kind of realized that Colossal was placed very low in this draft.
Yeah. Down here it's
40 points.
40. Yeah,
so 40 points, you can get a Colossal, which is a fire type. It's a rapid spinner. It's rocks and spikes, which Weavile appreciates and Terrakion appreciates.
Yeah.
So I feel like picking that up in later rounds would be great.
Yeah,
we don't really have to face, and it's a flying check as well. So.
Yeah, exactly. I think it shares some weaknesses with Terrakion in terms of ground, water, and fighting. But if you look at our draft, so this is something that a lot of people will get paranoid though about. They'll be like, I can't take another rock type because I'll have too many common weaknesses. But if you look at fire, water, and fighting types, water, fighting, and ground types against our team, we've been drafting around covering those weaknesses, so I don't think adding that common weakness with Colossal is too bad. Colossal also gives us Rapid Spin, which is amazing, gives us Spikes plus Rocks, which is amazing. I think this is not that valuable in singles, but it can be useful against Trick Room teams, and it's actually a really good fire switch in for Celebi and Weavile, because I played, Uzi Gunner picked up Colossal in the actual season of this, and I was very scared to click certain moves versus his Colossal, because I was like, oh, if he's Pasho Berry Steam Engine, he's just going to sweep my whole team. If I click a fire move and he switches in with his Colossal, he'll sweep my whole team, because he's going to get the +6 speed, and Colossal's actually decently strong. It's not crazy strong, but fire plus rock is quite good offensive coverage. And of course, it gets Earthquake as well.
The other thing with Colossal, which I think is very underrated, is the Flame Body ability. Because,
yes.
Flame Body coupled with the fact that you're pretty much enticing your opponent with trying to U-turn spam versus a Celebi team, which is very common, isn't really going to work out great, because if you start U-turn spamming and Colossal comes in, then you get your burnt, you get Scarfed burned for free, which is really nice. So I kind of like Colossal on this team. We don't need to pick it up right away. I feel like Colossal can wait like 1 or 2 rounds. Right now, we should focus on probably getting some sort of maybe Steel type. I don't really know. Colossal kind of patched up a lot of the things that I was kind of looking at, like Flying Resist and Flying, Rapid Spin, and Stealth Rocker, kind of all 3 in one mon, which is kind of unfortunate. Doesn't really happen that often, but right now our team is looking decently good on speed tiers. Definitely want to have something else coupled with Celebi that kind of can form some sort of bulky core.
Yes.
I don't know what you're looking at right now, Matt, but we can definitely pick something else bulky up, I'd say, and something else that can pivot, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking through the tiers now, and I'm trying to think like something that would support Celebi. I'm wondering about like a bulky something like Wheezing that can maybe set T-Spikes would be a really good ground immunity to support the fact that, like we said, if we played against a Flygon, for example, we might be in trouble. It would give us a nice other U-turn check as well in terms of just being resistant to U-turn and being able to quite happily run Rocky Helmet Pain Split and stuff like that. I don't know how you feel about Wheezing. I don't know if it's someone you like. It's someone I've used quite a few times and had some joy with, but I don't think it's the worst pick here, just in terms of giving us Levitate and all that stuff. Does it get a second ability now so that you can soak up T-Spikes, or does it not? Yeah.
It does. So you get neutralizing gas now, which is actually kind of cool, because now we can switch in on claps and shit. And I like Wheezing. I feel like it's a fairly good fairy response this generation.
Yep.
And since we picked up the main, I mean, we probably need a steel type at some point, but
yes.
We have one of the few fairy types that really hits it hard. Gardevoir would be another one with the Psychic Stab, but stuff like Clefable and I don't know, what kind of other fairies do you have? Alcremie and stuff can be checked by Weezing quite well. I mean, it's a budget pick. I can kind of dig.
Yeah, I don't think it should be our next pick on the draft, probably the round after. I'm trying to see what tier it's in now that I've picked it. Here it is. So it's in
like 60 points.
60 points. Actually next to Steelix, which could be interesting. I don't know how you feel about Steelix as an option on this team. People have been saying that Steelix is a bit of a sleeper pick. I've always slept on it. I've always thought it was pretty bad. But I've seen a lot of love for Steelix recently.
I can kind of think that if we were in the back end of the wheel, this is round number 5?
No, maybe? We're on round 6. I put Weezing in at round 7, Colossal at round 8 or 9. So this is still only round 6, so it might be a bit early for Steelix. We might want to bump some things a bit later back, but
I don't think it's too early for Steelix. I feel like Steelix could be picked up easily this round, especially since how valuable it is. It's a very good ground as well. Since we don't have that right now, we don't want to force Celebi to deal with all sorts of I don't know, electric types. Maybe like a Toxtricity comes into a matchup. I feel like Steelix will be needed. You can't really force Celebi to rock out Spadef every single week. So I feel like add Steelix round 6 and then pick up round 7 Weezing.
I agree. So one of the big things that I spoke about, as well as I said, was how pressured Mandibuzz was to be my whole defensive backbone because of how poor Claydol was. So I completely agree here, where this really relieves some of the pressure on I think it was 60 as well for Steelix, right? That really relieves some of the pressure on Celebi and frees that up a little bit. It's a decent steel type, which, as you say, in this format is so scarce. Yeah, it was 60 points. 60 points isn't too bad. The other things in 60 points that are decent steel types are like Escavalier, but I think we want the hazard options to free up Celebi and Terrakion to be more offensive. Because I do like offensive Celebi on this team as well. So being able to bring it both ways is really what I think you want. Because Celebi's like, to me, a very, very budget Mew in the sense of you can bring it defensive every week, but if you can free it up to be offensive, like Nasty Plot sets can actually be pretty good and should be respected, because grass plus ground coverage, if you think, guys, like the major grass resists in Draft League format, steals, poisons, and fires are all weak to Celebi's earth power. So it does actually have decent coverage offensively, plus psychic as well to hit the bulky grasses that otherwise might try to wall you. So I think Weezing then Steelix then Weezing is really, really nice. I think we could probably move Colossal around back now and pick up something else in round 8.
Because right now the only thing that I feel like we are might be a little bit overwhelmed by is offensive ghost types. If you look at our team right now, we have no ghost resist and a main bulky core of maybe like Celebi, Primarina, and Steelix doesn't really want to deal with something like an offensive Chandelure or a Gengar or something.
Yeah.
So having some sort of bulky normal would be great. We can either go pretty expensive, and we have right the point that Snorlax was actually taken. I don't know when Snorlax was taken, or even like an Obstagoon was taken. Maybe that's doubling up a bit too much. But I feel like a bulky normal would be great here.
No, I completely agree with you. I think looking at the team now, things that I would like to pick up before the end of the draft, a good Ghost Resist to partner Weavile, as you say. I think a good Flying type wouldn't be too bad either. They're the kind of things that I'm looking at. We could combine those and go for something like Braviary, but I really don't think that's the best ghost check there is, to be honest. Something like Indeedee actually could be quite interesting. Setting Psychic Terrain for actually Weavar's Ice Shard, that wouldn't be great. No. I was thinking Psychic Terrain for Celebi could be fun. Stops Mach Punches and Bullet Punches for Terrakion, but I think, we want our Ice Shards too much.
Yeah, and I mean, you can kind of go for a budget Munchlax pick later on in the draft if you really want something. But I feel like either Snorlax, which was picked up, don't know when. Braviary is definitely slept on, in my opinion. It has very good special defense. I can definitely check a maybe like a Gengar or not so much a Chandelure if it specs, but it's not the worst normal type in the game, is my opinion. So I feel like a Braviary could actually be pretty cool here.
I think that could be really interesting. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Man, this format was so restricted, wasn't it? I really like the Snorlax pick, and Snorlax was lasting till this round in some leagues, because with the berry nerf, I think people like to sleep on Snorlax now. Obstagoon was a really cool suggestion, but I don't think it would last. It was very popular. There could be things like Type Null and stuff, which Type Null's okay. It's not too bad. I've seen it used pretty well, but I'm not sure it would be the pick I would want on this team. I definitely wouldn't want anything like Greedent. Drampa could be interesting. I mean, we don't have a dragon. I don't know if you like Drampa, though, or if that's a mon that you just think is bad.
I don't mind Drampa. I feel like Drampa's pretty cool.
I think that could be interesting because it gives us Glare support, which for Terrakion, like slowing stuff down with Glare's nice. It gives us another remover because right now our only removal is Spin Colossal, which I'm not crazy about. I actually quite like the Drampa pick, and I think that could free us up for maybe a more offensive flying type or something. Even if we also doubled up and took Braviary as well, it just means Braviary can be ran more offensively. And as you said, some of the major ghosts that we'd be worried about in this format would be Chandelure, which Drampa would eat alive. Would be maybe Gengar, which Drampa could definitely take a hit from and do big damage back, or even just Glare, and then that's essentially a dead Gengar, because Gengar without speed is useless. I really like that pick.
I feel like the one thing that Braviary gives the team, other than just being like bulky, is a very good scarfed option, which we don't really have right now.
That is true.
If you look at our team, we do have Speedy Mons in Terrakion, Weavile. Then it kind of drops into Celebi, which we kind of don't want to force to be brought as Scarfer. We definitely don't want Terrakion to be scarfed every single week.
I don't like Scarf.
Having Braviary as a having Braviary as a scarfed option, as a cleaner, and as a potential just as a pseudo check to a lot of these like really fast Pokemon like a Dragapult or something could be quite essential actually for the team. And Braviary brings defog as well. Not the best defogger, I'd say, but
it can do it. You can run it.
It's definitely not a frail mon, so it could be cool. Braviary is 100 points. How many points do we have left?
Okay, with the Drampa pick, was Drampa 40 or 60?
No idea.
Let me have a look. Drampa was 60 so points. With the Drampa pick alongside it, it leaves us with another 80 points to spend, which is pretty interesting because I feel like this already looks like a pretty strong team. Let's just go over some of the basic things we'd want to recap. So we have a good offensive core. Our defensive backbone was I think a little bit water weak, potentially forcing Celebi into more defensive roles, but with the addition of Drampa, I think that really does help that. We're not kind of too ice plus water weak with Primarina on there as well. We're not too electric weak with Drampa plus Steelix. We've got decent removal now in Spin plus 2 Defoggers. We have a T-Spike Absorber if we need it. We have Spikes plus T-Spikes. We have 4 Rockers, 2 of which in Steelix and Colossal are quite happy to run rocks. I think we've got most of our bases covered. I'm just trying to think if there's any obvious Pokemon that would rip this team apart. I mean, things like Mamoswine threaten every team, so you can almost look at every draft ever and say Mamoswine beats this draft, but that's just because their offensive typing's so good. And even then, we have like Weezing, which can kind of help with Mamoswine. for the most part, I think this is looking really solid. So what would you be looking for in your last 80-point pick here? What kind of would be on your mind?
So the only thing that I am looking at right now that could be a little bit of an issue is some sort of, I don't know, maybe an offensive fighting or something. Right now, it's nothing in particular that really stands out to be super annoying for the team.
No, seems a good team. I like this team. I should have drafted this team.
So the one thing I was just looking through the 80-point one, and the one thing that actually stuck out to me was Doublade. Actually, I feel like Doublade would be a very interesting second edition as a steel type. So Steelix doesn't have to be super pressured by bulky fairy types. The blade also covers a lot of the coverage options that psychic types gets forced into against our team.
Yeah.
So obviously psychic types right now needs to carry something for Weavile in order to be walled. That could be some sort of X's or something. If you think about a Necrozma,
yeah,
like psychic plus bug could do some damage to us.
Yeah.
The blade kind of shuts that down, right?
Yes.
So and the other thing is priority. If you break heavily with Terrak and Weavile, always have some sort of late game cleaner in the blade with sword stance and shadow sneak, and overall the general bulk. I just feel like the blade would be fit in fairly well, since we do have a lot of good fire checks, we do have a lot of ground checks, we have a lot of dark checks, and even ghost checks now with the double normal.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that one of the things that I was looking at when I was asking you what else you were looking for, I felt like we were I wanted a little bit more firepower to end off the draft. I wanted something else to be a bit stronger, and one of the key things I think you mentioned there is the priority of Shadow Sneak. Right now, our only mon with priority is Weavile, which means that, sure, things like Dragon Dance, Flygon and stuff won't be too much of a threat, but I think that priority can never be underappreciated. Things like, that's why I love like Galissapod, for example, because having double stab priority and spikes and stuff, oh, that mon's so nice. So yeah, I was actually thinking myself about another offensive piece, ideally with priority. I was actually going to suggest Galissapod, as I didn't think it hurt us too much on this team. But I can see the value of Doublade, actually. I don't even know what tier Galissapod is in. I tried looking, but I couldn't find it. I don't know where they tiered it.
Gold Easy Pod is 40 points, so we would have 40 points left after if we picked up Gold Easy Pod, so we can bump something up if you want to.
Why is that so cheap? I can't even see it. Where is it? A, B,
I don't
C,
know.
D. Oh, I'm not low enough down. That's so, because this is similar tiers to the UBL where I drafted it for 40 points.
Yeah.
Ooh, I do like the Doublade pick though, but if we were to bump, I wonder if we could get another Scarfer flying type like Braviary for an extra 40 points, like a 140 point Scarf flying type or anything like that. No, it'd only be something like Gyarados.
Hawlucha, but I mean, you don't really want to run that Scarf.
No.
There's definitely, like, if you
Togekiss?
have this as a basis, you can definitely bump something off. You don't really need Togekiss, not gonna lie.
I just love Togekiss.
But if you want to go Togekiss, go Togekiss. I just thought that this was like a great outline. The last one isn't really needed.
No, because this team's already pre-fire.
I like Doublade. It doesn't have to be set in stone. Yeah, so.
I like Doublade.
If you like Doublade.
I like Doublade. The one thing, I'm just thinking if maybe Colossal could be Galissapod now, if we picked up... Anyway, we don't need to get into this. The point is, guys, this is a good team. We're not going to get into... We're not actually drafting this team. This is where me and Eric would sit and call arguing for hours about what the final pick should be, and why it shouldn't be Beedrill. But this is a very good example of the processes we go through when we're looking at a team, how we look to build an offensive core in those first 5 picks there, and then how we look to fill out the other important roles in a draft league setting, such as T-Spikers, such as Defoggers, such as covering common weaknesses like a flying weakness or a water weakness. So hopefully this, guys, gives you a bit of an illustration on what constitutes a good draft and what people who are, in Eric's case, good at the game look at when they're drafting. Well, I think this is.
I just want to throw something. Yeah, I just want to throw something in there. That obviously this is just a draft that we threw together.
Yes.
Now in call.
Yes.
take this with a grain of salt, please.
Yes.
Don't just expect to go out there, drop this team, and expect some greatness. Like, there are no perfect teams, but even though you might just throw some together, they can have like baselines that you can follow.
Yeah.
So really think about the course that you're trying to combine, especially in the first rounds.
Yeah,
what they're trying to cover for each other. Maybe write down on like a notepad.
Yes.
What you're struggling with, and try and find those in the lower tier modes.
And crucially, if you're someone who plays Draft League very chilled, you don't want to spend too much time on it, then you can just go through this process. If you're someone who really wants to be a competitive player and really wants to compete at a higher level, there are flaws with this team. For example, we have 4 mons at a 30 speed, so we have quite a few really slow mons. I could maybe try and pick up some extra speed and stuff like that on this team. Our speed tiers are not great. We pretty much go 60, 80, 100. So there are definitely like flaws where Eric and I would walk away and say, right, these things aren't good enough. Like, let's work on those. And we would try and figure those out over the coming days. So if you are someone who wants to compete in Draft League and take it more seriously, you can come up with an outline like this, and then, like Eric said, you can go for a walk. You can think about these things when you're on the toilet, when you're in the shower, where we all do our best thinking. And you can kind of think, actually, there is a hole. Like, I just, in 30 seconds, saw, hold on a minute, we've got a speed tier problem. And in a league like this, we could patch it up. But also be aware of the metagame you're playing in. Be aware that there are no perfect drafts, and that you will have to concede defeats somewhere. A big thing that I do that people hate is I don't give a shit about overriding ground weaknesses. I have this thing where I think a ground weakness is the least important weakness for a draft, because you will bring flying types and levitators every week. That's just me. Other people will disagree with you. So everyone will have their own things where they're willing to give ground on, where they're willing to see flaws in their team, but they're still happy to use it. And I think that's the other thing, is that Eric and I here have drafted a team that he and I could probably use. You might not be that kind of player. I'm just going to quickly give an example. He has a YouTube channel, so you can go check him out. Shay Quasar is a player that I'm sure Eric will vouch here that we both really respect. He drafts differently to the two of us. He drafts much more like HO type stuff, right?
Yep.
And if he looked at this team, he'd be like, oh, I don't want to use that team. And if I looked at his team, I might be like, oh, I don't want to use that team. So always bear in mind as well what you like playing with, what your style is, and tailor it to yourself. And don't be afraid to ask people for help, right? I didn't do this video on my own because I thought it would be better to have someone else shoulder the burden. But even then, in Draft League, like, I don't very often draft alone anymore if I'm taking a league seriously. And I don't even think you do that much, Eric, right? We've spoken about your drafts before and stuff. So
yeah.
Even top players will ask for help. Don't ever be afraid to do that. But yeah. This was fun. I don't know how you feel about your surprise now. If we're gonna end this video and you're gonna tell me off for springing this on you, but thank you so much for helping me do this. It was honestly a pleasure to have you do this with me.
Anytime, man. It was kind of fun.
Yeah, I think so too. So we will be back with more Wi-Fi Draft League content soon, guys, and of course more Draft League reviews. So if I haven't said it already, which I think I have, do hit that subscribe button, stick around, and we'll have more content like this. Thank you so much for loafing around with us. I will catch you again next time.
This was the Devious Ditto, and goodbye.